The caterer slid a single glass of lukewarm sparkling wine onto the far corner table, the one beside the service entrance, and glanced at me with pity. Sorry, Dr. Vance. They said they needed to give your reserved 10 top to the venture capital guys. I stared at the empty card that should have read Maid of Honor, or at least Sister of the Groom, knowing that the venture capital guys were just Caleb's latest marks in a non-existent company. My mother, Laura, floated past, not meeting my eye, a shimmering blue blur, too busy arranging flowers to see her eldest daughter being systematically erased from the most significant family event in a decade. It wasn't just exclusion. It was a deliberate public demotion. I watched her adjust white roses on the head table, laughing with Caleb's fiancée, Veronica, while I sat invisible in the corner. The message was clear. I didn't matter enough to be seen. What the hell just happened to me? The immediate emotional reaction wasn't sadness. It was a deep, cold surge of fury. This wasn't an oversight. It was a message. My name is Dr. Amelia Vance. I'm a cardiac surgeon at Massachusetts General, and I'm the person who for 20 years has ensured this family has remained financially and emotionally solvent. I was the family fixer, the silent, responsible safety net. I'd pulled them from bankruptcy twice. I'd covered Caleb's rent when he was finding himself in his 20s. I'd paid for Dad's surgery when insurance fell through. That night, sitting alone at the service table, watching my brother laugh with guests I'd never met, I decided the net was officially being cut. No more rescue missions. No more emergency funds. I was done being the invisible ATM that kept this family running while they celebrated their golden child. The real problem, and the reason for the exclusion, wasn't my intensity like Mom claimed. It was my ability to see the ledger. Caleb, my younger brother, and the perpetual golden child had amassed over $80,000 in failed crypto schemes and seed money from Mom and Dad over the past 5 years. Every penny I made was supposed to be the family's emergency fund. Caleb's only job was to fail expensively, and my parents' only job was to enable him. I remembered every conversation where Mom justified another bailout. He's creative, Amelia. Not everyone can be like you. Translation, not everyone could actually succeed, so the rest of us had to subsidize his fantasies. Meanwhile, I worked 70-hour weeks, missed holidays, postponed relationships, all while being told I was too focused on work to understand family priorities. The irony burned like acid. 2 years ago, I gave Caleb a $50,000 check. It wasn't a gift, it was the agreed-upon down payment for the family's Dream Lake cottage, a retirement fund I managed for my parents. I told him to put it directly into the mutual account. I'd never checked. I'd been too busy saving lives, trusting my family to do the right thing for once. Sitting there in the cold shadow of the service door, I pulled up the bank statement on my phone. The $50,000 was gone. Withdrawn 6 months ago, not deposited. My hands shook as I scrolled through the transactions. There was no cottage purchase, no mutual account deposit, just a clean withdrawal with Caleb's signature. I felt my chest tighten, that familiar pressure I recognized in my patients before their hearts gave out. This wasn't forgetfulness, this was theft. Caleb's wedding to the heiress Veronica was a $150,000 spectacle designed to look like a merger of equals. Imported flowers from Ecuador, a 12-piece orchestra, custom champagne flutes with their initials engraved. He had zero income. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't just theft. It was impossible math. I logged into my personal investment portfolio, the one linked to my practice's credit line. A new, unfamiliar loan document dated 2 months prior appeared under my name. $50,000 at 18% interest. The collateral? My medical practice's assets. Everything I'd built over 15 years of grueling work. My breath caught in my throat. This couldn't be real. I clicked again, refreshing the page, praying it was a system error. The document remained official and damning. Someone had taken out a loan in my name, risking everything I'd worked for. I clicked the signature line. The signature was crude, shaky, but unmistakably trying to mimic mine. It was a forgery, and Caleb was the only one with access to my personal documents. He'd borrowed them once for an important business for him 3 months ago when he came to my house asking to use my printer. I'd let him into my home office. I trusted him like an idiot. The realization didn't just hurt. It was a physical punch to my gut. I wasn't just unappreciated. I was being actively, legally exploited, my career put on the line for his vanity wedding. Every surgery I'd performed, every life I'd saved, every sleepless night, all of it now is served as collateral for my brother's fraud. I stared at that shaky signature, feeling something fundamental break inside me. This was beyond betrayal. This was calculated destruction. The next morning, I called my mother Laura, not about the money, but about the forged loan. She didn't deny it. She just whispered, "Amelia, honey, Caleb needed the boost. He promises to pay it back after the wedding. It's a temporary sacrifice. You're a doctor. You can handle the collateral risk better than he can handle the stress of not having a perfect day." The gaslighting was so absolute, so casual, it sterilized the last ounce of warmth I had for her. She knew. She'd known about the forgery and said nothing. Worse, she was justifying it. My own mother was telling me that my brother's wedding mattered more than my career, my financial security, my entire professional life. I hung up without another word, my hands trembling with rage. The woman who'd raised me had just told me I was worth less than a party. "I wasn't invited to the reception, Mom," I said, my voice surgically calm, before she could call back. When she did ring again, I answered with ice in my veins. "I am not attending your cleanup." She sputtered something about family loyalty, about how I was being selfish. I hung up. I drove straight to my practice's lawyer, Miles, a man who had seen my professional life built brick by brick. I slid the forged loan documents across his mahogany desk. The paper didn't feel like a loan. It felt like a declaration of war. Miles examined the signature, his jaw tightening. "This is criminal fraud, Amelia. We can prosecute." I nodded slowly. But prosecution meant family destruction, court battles, public scandal. It meant becoming the villain in their story. I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. First, I needed to understand exactly how deep this betrayal went. Miles confirmed the forgery was legally actionable and recommended immediate action. I told him to hold. I looked out the window at the city I'd helped heal and realized something profound. I had been trying to fix a family that didn't want to be saved, only subsidized. This was my moment of clarity. For 20 years, I'd been the solution to every problem, the answer to every crisis. And where had it gotten me? Stolen from, excluded, disrespected. I will not fix this one, I decided. Let the world and the law teach the lesson I could not. My parents had made their choice when they helped Caleb forge my signature. They'd chosen him over me, his comfort over my security. Now they could live with that choice. I would step back and watch what happened when the safety net disappeared. It felt terrifying and liberating in equal measure. My revenge needed to be clean, legal, and undeniable. I hired a private investigator, not to dig up dirt, but to confirm the rumors I'd seen circulating about Caleb's digital entrepreneurship. His latest venture was something called Crypto Future Solutions, a platform that promised guaranteed returns through blockchain technology. It sounded impressive to people who didn't understand either term. Within 48 hours, the report landed on my desk. I read it in my office between patients, my coffee growing cold. Caleb's company was a confirmed, actively monitored Ponzi scheme that had just bilked a major investor out of $100,000. The FBI was involved, wire fraud, embezzlement, securities violations. The investigator had included transcripts of federal monitoring reports. My little brother wasn't just a failure, he was a criminal. And the arrest was coming. The investigator's report included a chilling detail. The arrest warrant for wire fraud and embezzlement was already issued, but they were waiting for Caleb to cross state lines after the wedding to serve it, maximizing jurisdiction. They wanted him to feel safe, celebrated, untouchable. Then they'd strike. I had damning, private information that could prevent the public disaster. A simple, anonymous email to my father, Richard, could stop the wedding, save the family from humiliation, protect Veronica from marrying a criminal. I sat at my computer, cursor blinking in an empty draft. My fingers hovered over the keys. This was it. The moment where I could prove I was still the good daughter, still the family fixer. All I had to do was type a warning, but my hands wouldn't move. Something had shifted inside me. Why should I save them again? I stared at the blank email draft. Why should I sacrifice my peace and risk my safety one more time for the people who had sacrificed my financial security and self-respect for their golden boy? I thought of my table by the service door, the insult to my profession, the forged signature risking my medical license, my mother's casual dismissal of felony fraud. I deleted the draft. I consciously chose an action. You made your bed, Caleb. Sleep in it. The decision felt like letting go of 1,000 pounds of emotional concrete. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't rushing to prevent a family disaster. I wasn't fixing, planning, or sacrificing. I was simply stepping aside. It felt wrong and right simultaneously. My therapist would probably call this progress. My family would call it betrayal. I called it self-preservation. The next week was surreal. I performed 2 open-heart surgeries, discussing cholesterol and stents, holding human hearts in my hands while knowing my brother was days away from a federal arrest at his own wedding. My parents called twice, trying to butter me up, asking if I'd changed my mind about the reception. Mom's voicemail said something about not wanting to leave things like this and family healing. I gave only clinical one-word answers when I finally called back. Yes, number? Maybe. Each response was designed to give no information, only icy detachment. I watched them scramble to interpret my coolness, trying to figure out if I was truly done or just making a point. Let them wonder. Let them feel the uncertainty I'd lived with for years, never knowing when the next crisis would drain my savings. 3 days before the wedding, my father Richard called, his voice tight with forced authority. Amelia, your mother is very upset. This is your chance to make things right. Show up early to the rehearsal dinner, apologize to Caleb, and maybe we can fix this. I gripped the phone, feeling my blood pressure spike. Apologize for what? For being robbed? For being excluded? For having standards? I took a deep breath. I will be sending a wedding gift, Father. A notarized statement concerning the $50,000 loan. That is all the fixing I plan on doing. The line went silent. I could hear his breathing, that familiar sound of him trying to process information that didn't fit his worldview. Then he hung up without another word. Good. Let him tell Mom. Let them both understand that I knew everything. And I was done pretending otherwise. A new twist arrived via my phone. Caleb's fiancée, Veronica, called me hysterical. She'd found out Caleb was paying for their honeymoon to the Maldives with her trust fund money, not his. $25,000 transferred without her knowledge. She begged me to talk him out of his shady business deals. She thought I had influence. She thought family meant something. I could have easily exposed the Ponzi scheme right then, could have saved her from marrying a criminal, could have prevented her from becoming legally entangled in federal fraud charges. But I only said, Veronica, my professional advice is that you consult a lawyer immediately. I have no other involvement in Caleb's finances. She started crying, asking why I was being so cold. I hung up gently. I had no desire to save the ship anymore. I only wanted a front row seat to the inevitable wreckage. The day before the wedding, the family group chat was buzzing with photos, excitement, and demands for last-minute help. Pictures of the venue, the cake, Caleb's tuxedo fitting, requests for someone to pick up great Aunt Helen, someone to grab extra ice, someone to confirm the photographer. No one messaged me. No one asked if I was coming. No one requested my help. They had completely deleted me from the narrative, assuming I was somewhere quietly licking my wounds, eventually coming around. Their silence was my shield. Their assumption of my absence was my most powerful weapon. I muted the group chat and spent the evening reviewing patient charts, finding comfort in the work that actually mattered. The monitoring machines beeped steadily, hearts beating, lives continuing. Some things you could fix, some things you had to let fail. Wedding day arrived on a Saturday. I was on call at the hospital, reviewing charts in the physician's lounge, the steady beep of monitoring machines a counterpoint to the impending societal collapse. I checked my professional email. Miles, my lawyer, had sent one note: be ready. I put my phone on the desk, not on silent. I knew the call was coming. I'd done the math. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 p.m. The FBI would likely wait until the vows, maximizing the public impact, ensuring Caleb felt completely secure before they struck. It was strategic. It was brutal. It was exactly what he deserved. I poured myself coffee and waited. A nurse passed by, chattering about weekend plans. I nodded absently. My weekend plans involved watching my brother's life implode. Strange how calm I felt. No guilt, no second thoughts, just patient, surgical precision. A nurse rushed into the lounge, phone in hand, eyes wide. Dr. Vance, you have to see this. It's the most insane wedding moment ever. It's everywhere online. I watched the shaky live stream footage on her screen. Caleb standing at the altar in his custom tuxedo, looking smug, about to utter his vows. The officiant paused. The chapel doors burst open. 2 men in dark suits and 3 federal marshals stormed down the aisle. Caleb Vance, you have a warrant for your arrest on charges of wire fraud and embezzlement. Caleb's face went from smug to sheet white in seconds. Veronica gasped, stepping back from him like he was contaminated. The camera shook as guests started screaming. I watched it twice, my coffee growing cold in my hands. It was more dramatic than I'd imagined. Perfect, absolutely perfect. The footage escalated into pure chaos. Caleb was being handcuffed, protesting his innocence, claiming mistaken identity. My father, Richard, enraged, physically lunged at one of the marshals. 2 groomsmen had to pull him back. The camera captured my mother, Laura, letting out a shriek that could crack glass, repeating like a broken record, "This is Caleb's day. You can't ruin Caleb's day. He hasn't done anything. You have the wrong person." It wasn't the arrest that went viral. It was the mother's shrieking entitlement and the father's futile defense. It was the undeniable shame of their prioritization. Comments flooded the live stream. Who raises a criminal like this? The parents are just as bad. That poor bride. I read them all, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. They'd made their choices. Now the whole world could see what those choices produced. Within an hour, the arrest footage, now stabilized and professionally captioned with the charges of wire fraud and embezzlement, made the national news cycle. CNN, NBC, FOX. They all ran it. The local anchor referred to the family as the notorious fraudsters, showing photos of Caleb's fake business website alongside the arrest video. The shame was universal, inescapable, and permanent. Social media exploded. Wedding arrest trended on Twitter. TikTok users created reaction videos. YouTube channels analyzed the footage frame by frame. The camera lingered on my father being escorted out by security, defeated and humiliated. My mother's face was frozen in horror, mascara streaming. Veronica had collapsed into a chair, surrounded by her wealthy family who looked absolutely appalled. This wasn't just a family scandal. It was a national spectacle, and I'd seen it coming for weeks. My phone rang. Laura. Mom. I let it ring twice, composing myself, then answered. My voice was steady, professional, the same tone I use with difficult patients. "Hello, Laura." She was sobbing, hysterical, barely coherent. Amelia, you have to call your contacts. This is a nightmare. Get him out. You can fix this. Tell them you didn't know about the money. Tell them it's a mistake. Use your connections at the hospital. Someone there must know someone. Please, she still saw me only as a tool for their convenience. Not a daughter, not a person. Just a resource to be exploited when convenient and discarded when unnecessary. The anger I'd been suppressing for weeks crystallized into something cold and hard. She wanted me to fix this. After everything, she still expected me to clean up their mess. This was the emotional climax. I took a deep breath, letting the silence hang between us while she sobbed into the phone. Laura, I was not invited to the wedding reception, and I told you I would not be attending the cleanup. I paused, letting the cold, rational statement sink in like a blade. My only attendance will be a mandated legal one discussing the $50,000 you and Caleb stole from me using a forged signature. You made your choice years ago. Now you live with the consequences. I hung up. The peace that descended was absolute. My hands didn't shake. My heart rate stayed steady. I'd spent 20 years putting their needs first. I'd sacrificed relationships, vacations, peace of mind, and they'd thanked me by stealing from me. No more. The phone rang again. I declined the call. Then blocked the number. Freedom felt ice cold and surprisingly wonderful. 3 weeks later, a mandated family meeting with both lawyers present. Caleb was out on bail, looking fragile and defeated, wearing an ankle monitor. Laura was subdued, her usual commanding presence reduced to a whisper. Richard was furious, jaw clenched, refusing to look at me. I did not speak until Miles presented the undeniable evidence, the bank statements, the forged loan documents, and the FBI's timeline, which implicated Caleb in systematic fraud that had been ongoing for 18 months. I finally broke the silence, directing my words to the stone-faced lawyer. I will accept the immediate repayment of the $50,000, plus my legal fees, and the immediate unconditional transfer of the lake, cottage property into my name, as compensation for the risk to my medical practice's assets. My voice was clinical, unemotional. This wasn't revenge, it was accounting. The parents tried to argue. Richard ranted about family and forgiveness and blood being thicker than water. Laura cried about how I was destroying what was left of their reputation, as if they hadn't destroyed it themselves. But the paperwork was irrefutable. Caleb's criminal charges made his testimony worthless. The forged signature was confirmed by 3 handwriting experts. They had no legal standing. They had no moral high ground. They had nothing except the consequences of their own choices. Richard signed over the cottage deed, his hand shaking with rage. The signature wasn't revenge. It was the final, legally binding confirmation that my worth had finally been acknowledged, not because they loved me, but because the law forced them to recognize what they'd taken. I walked out of that office $50,000 richer and completely free. 6 months later, I stood on the porch of my cottage, which was now legally mine, not the family's shared asset. The lake stretched out before me, perfectly still in the morning light. I hadn't spoken to my parents or Caleb since the signing. They were dealing with Caleb's pending trial and their own social disgrace. Friends had abandoned them. The country club had revoked their membership. Their church had quietly asked them to find another congregation. I finally had quiet. I had my self-respect. My practice was thriving. I'd taken on 2 junior partners and was teaching at the medical school. I closed my eyes, breathing in the cold, clean air off the lake. I had paid my dues to them for 2 decades. Now I was finally paying myself. I'd achieved not bitter revenge, but earned freedom and closure. The cottage was mine. My life was mine. And that was worth more than any family that never valued me anyway.